Hello and welcome to the Kentucky Today podcast. I'm Lawrence Smith, the editor of Kentucky Today, alongside our usual crew, managing editor Mark Maynard, content editor Chip Hutchison, and life issues reporter Tessa Redmond. Good to see all of you again. We're back together again after Tessa was on assignment last week. We're going to talk about that assignment shortly as we talk about top stories. But Chip, I want to begin with you. What is your top story of the week that was on Kentucky Today or that you personally worked on?
The revival that happened at Hartford Baptist Church. We had a story a few weeks ago on the revitalization effort there. That church was down a few years ago to just a handful of people. And Clint White's been the pastor there for the past 2.5 years, each year has a revival, and had just a remarkable revival March 8th through 10th. A lot of churches don't have revivals anymore, but he says they still work. But he cautions that a church has to be prepared for revival. It's more than just setting a meeting date and getting someone to come in to preach. He said they prayed hard, they worked hard. The result was each night, and this was March 8th through 10th, they had altar full of people. And the invitation continued for 20 to 25 minutes. Said they had to move a table off from in front by the altar to make room for more people coming to the altar. And Luke Lesmaster, who's the executive pastor of Grace Point Baptist Church here in Louisville, was the revival preacher. Caden White, Clint and Tanya White's son, led the music, and just had a remarkable time of people being saved, people rededicating, people coming forward just to repent of their sins. And it certainly is an encouragement to people that to have revival, but to have revival to prepare for it, to pray hard, to work hard, to invite people to come to it. And it's good to see it. Matthew Sickling was the associational mission strategist for the Ohio County Baptist Association, said it was remarkable. And he was there 2 of the 3 nights and could not say enough good things about how the Lord worked in those 3 days.
Yeah, last week you talked about the revitalization at Hartford Baptist, and now they're leading a revival. So that's good news what's going on there. Mark, what about you? You've had a busy week.
I've had a busy week, and they don't slow down, so that's okay. That's good. But I didn't have as busy a week as some kids from Eastern Kentucky University had, and also the University of Louisville. They were at Panama City Beach in Florida on spring break, but it wasn't a spring break like you might think. It was an evangelistic spring break for them. And at Eastern Kentucky in particular, I spoke with Jake Hancock, who's the BCM Baptist Campus Ministry leader there. And they had 86 kids, and they rented 16 minivans, and they, caravan down to Panama City, and they did this beach reach, which he's done it for 6 years, 5 or 6 years now. And it's just an amazing ministry that they do. And it's basically what they do. They work from 7 p.m. till 3 in the morning. They have their numbers are out there for people to call who need a ride, maybe people who are drunk, maybe even from a bar. They stop and they find them and they pick them up. They don't go inside the bar ever, but they will go outside. And the people, when they call, they say, I'm wearing a blue shirt, and a green hat, or, khaki shorts, or whatever they're wearing. And my name is Sam, or, whatever the name is. And that's, they have one person designated to go find that person. It's so mapped out so well. It's just incredible. The preparation that they have put into this, preparation on sharing the gospel, using tools like 3 circles, and just, it's not just we're all going to pile in the van and we're going to go down there and, see what happens. It is a well-prepared plan. And it was real exciting talking to Jake. He was really, he was on cloud 9 over it. And I know they had 408 gospel conversations. They had 800 people they prayed for, more than 800, and they had 9 salvations. And, the salvations, we don't know, we don't save people. So you plant the seeds and let it happen. And that's what they've done. And Jake also shared his testimony with me. He was one of those beach kids on the beach with a beer when some beach reach people came to him and talked to him about it. And he's like, he went to church, he'd heard the gospel, all that. And, you know, when they were getting ready to leave, he said, "Hey, you guys are doing a good job. You know, you keep sharing your faith." And he walked away, and one of them grabbed his arm and said, "Hey, why do you act like that? You said you're a Christian. Why are you acting like this?" And that stuck with him, and that haunted him, basically. He said it was like a rock in a shoe the rest of that semester. Later in that semester, he did get saved, turned his life over to the Lord. Look where he's at now. I mean, you know, you just don't know. And those guys might have walked away from that time thinking, "Man, that guy, we got no hope with that guy." But, you know, you don't know. You share the gospel with people and you let the Lord do the work. And that's what they do with Beach Reach.
Great ministry. Outstanding that they give up their spring break, their vacation to go down there and share gospel. What a wonderful work our campus Baptist campus ministries are doing. But you also dove into politics this week as well.
Yeah, actually, that started from last week even. I guess it was last Friday evening when Governor Beshear vetoed House Bill 1, and that included the federal scholarship program, basically. And
tax credit.
That was really
federal scholarship program.
Yeah, free money basically is what it amounted to. You know, federal tax receipts for that, $1,700 if you donate that. And he vetoed it. You know, basically, I think he kind of painted it as something that is against public schools. It's not. Public schools can apply for these resources as well. Anybody can use them.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a private public thing. He kind of made it that because that's kind of been what he's kind of ridden his coattails on a little bit with, you know, the public schools and everything, and how, you know, we need to build up the public schools. And well, this is building up public schools. This is building up all Kentucky students, you know, not or private, public, whatever. It doesn't matter. And there was no reason to veto that. But he knew, we knew, everybody knew that was going to get overridden. And yesterday it did by big numbers in both chambers. You know, wasn't even close, and we knew it wouldn't be. And I can remember I wrote actually some of those Republicans who said, "I can't wait to override this veto." So they use their supermajority power to set things right and set things straight. So, you know, it will become law. And you know, praise the Lord. I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing for all Kentucky students, not just the private school students. It's not about that.
Well, it's no secret that the governor is positioning himself for national politics. So I think that was part of that played into this as well.
Yeah, I think it did. Although he has been against that even before. You know, he would be against it anytime, I think, to be honest with you, just because of the how he feels about that it's taken away from public schools. But you're right. I mean, that factored in probably.
Yeah. Tessa, you were not here last week because you were on assignment covering the annual March for Life, which turned into an interesting story. Talk about what you discovered.
Yes, the Kentucky March for Life really highlighted a tension that we've seen building in the pro-life movement. And that's really a division over how do we handle the woman in terms of if she's having an abortion, should she be held criminally liable for that or should she not? And that was really on full display. Kentucky Right to Life, who organized the event, they've come out against a bill, House Bill 714, which is the Prenatal Equal Protection Act. And there was a large group of people there at the march who were holding up signs in support of that bill. And Adia Wushner, the executive director of Kentucky Right to Life, had said in her opening comments that those who were holding up these signs in support of House Bill 714 were guests with them. So there's kind of this sense that though everyone was there to advocate for unborn children, to support pro-life causes, they weren't entirely unified. And a lot of the supporters of House Bill 714 that I spoke with, they said, we're not here to co-opt this event, we're here to march for life. And what's really interesting, just what I was observing, is kind of the dividing line. We have Catholics falling on one side and Protestants falling on the other. The pro-life movement has largely been championed by Catholics for a long time. They're in a lot of leadership positions with like Right to Life and things like that. And a lot of the supporters who were there for House Bill 714 came from Baptist churches, a lot of Kentucky Baptist churches. And the Bishop of Covington, who was there, actually spoke out and addressed people with signs and said, we don't agree with you. We don't agree that women should be prosecuted for homicide if they abort their children. So that's just a really, like I said, it's a tension we've seen building for a couple of years, and it it really exploded at the March for Life.
Interesting. I mean, we all are working toward the same goal, saving unborn children, but there is a division about how to go about that. So we hope it doesn't end up splintering the movement and making it less effective. But it was interesting. Great story you did on that, Tessa. A couple things from me. One, I did a story on the first debate between the Republican candidates for U.S. Senate to replace Senator Mitch McConnell, businessman Nate Morris, former Attorney General Daniel Cameron, and Congressman Andy Barr, all on the stage at the same time for the first time. And what struck me about that debate was how much Barr and Morris went after each other. They've been running attack ads against each other, them and their PACs, for weeks now, and that spilled over onto the stage where they went after each other and largely kind of ignored Daniel Cameron, who kind of came up, portrayed himself as maybe trying to stay above the fray. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what voters gravitate to. Will they be turned off by the attacks that Barr and Morris are going at each other, or will they appreciate Cameron so far not getting involved in that? One reason he hasn't is because, frankly, he hasn't raised enough money to run TV ads. So we'll see what happens when it does go up on the air. But that was an interesting aspect of that debate. Something else, a first person that we ran by Executive Director of the KBC, Dr. Todd Gray, that first person was asking Kentucky Baptist pastors, and through them all Kentucky Baptists, to contact their state senator to try to amend the state budget bill that's already passed the House to end requiring churches to collect the sales tax. Yes, we've talked about this before, and yes, churches in some circumstances do have to collect the sales tax. The spending bill, the appropriations bill, has already passed the House with no changes. That's still in there. We're asking senators to make that change so that churches are not, in effect, acting as agents of the state by collecting the sales tax. So those two stories, and quickly today, if you go to the website, KentuckyToday.com, you'll see an editorial on another bill, House Bill 904, which started as a way to make common sense restrictions on sports gambling, including raising the age of sports betting from 18 to 21. But that bill was folded into another bill, which would actually expand sports betting. So what started as a good thing, ending as a bad thing. We've got an editorial talking about that and the fact that the pro-gambling forces are trying to place poison in a glass of pure water, thereby poisoning the whole thing. So that's on our website right now. Staying in politics for just a minute. Last week, you'll recall, State Auditor Allison released a scathing report on the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. And she said that organization, that state agency, was failing foster children. In her report, which really outlined the number of kids who are being housed in office buildings and places like that are not secure. I interviewed her about that, and she had some good things in that interview to say about faith-based organizations like Sunrise Children's Services. You'll hear that. But I began by asking her why she launched this investigation in the first place.
Sure. It's a great question. There's a bit of a history here. Lawrence, as you'll remember, back in 2022-23, news outlets started reporting about foster kids sleeping in the L&N building in Louisville. And I wasn't state auditor at the time, but I heard the news stories, same as other Kentuckians, and I was really concerned about it. I had been a prosecutor years before doing dependency, neglect, and abuse cases. So I dealt a lot with foster kids, and I've always just had a heart for what they go through and the circumstances that surround their situations. So I paid attention to that story back then. The cabinet for a while was saying that they were working to resolve it. It was just a crisis situation. It was an emergency, and it wasn't going to continue. And so I kind of had in the back of my mind, this is something worth keeping an eye on, because if it ever were to be restarted or just continue, then we need to know about it and it needs to stop. So when I became state auditor, shortly after that, the ombudsman was added to the auditor's office, and that's a dedicated part of my office that looks just at CHFS. They look at the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. They investigate. They make recommendations to fix problems. That's the sole purpose of what they do. So one of the first things that we decided to do when they came over here was to look into the foster kids sleeping in office building situation to find out, had it stopped? Was it ongoing? So we conducted a preliminary investigation a little over a year ago to find out, was this still a problem? And when we did that, we found, in fact, that it was still a problem, and it wasn't limited to Louisville. It existed all over the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And at one point in time, the cabinet was suggesting that it was just older kids, very difficult to place, 16, 17-year-old boys, primarily, who were violent. And when we did our preliminary investigation, we found out that was not accurate. Like, there are those types of boys, but at that point in time, we found children as young as 1, 2, and 3 who were being housed in office buildings. So this showed us that it was ongoing, and it was still a serious situation. So we decided to do a thorough investigation, find out, all right, what is leading to this? What kind of treatment are they getting when they're in this kind of care? So in the course of that investigation, we found out it wasn't limited to just office buildings. It's also hotels, state parks, sometimes community centers and hospitals, not sick, like they're not admitted as a patient, they're just staying there temporarily. So it was a much bigger problem than we even realized when we first started looking into it. And it really amounts to having two types of populations. You do have the kids that are more violent, have some real serious behavioral issues, need some real oversight. That's about, we found about 300 kids, a little over 300 kids all together. And so about 170 of those kids were the more difficult to handle kids, but about 130 of those kids did not meet that profile. Many of those children had never been involved in care before. They were moved straight from home. Many of them had no diagnoses, no behavioral issues. Some of them were very young. We found 17 kids that were 6 years and younger. 4 of those kids were infants under the age of 1. So it basically covers every type of foster child who comes into this system. And it's a real serious issue. And then when we dug into it, we found out that the type of care they were receiving was not sufficient for either type of those populations. Most of these buildings, but all the buildings that we looked at that were offices, none of them had bathrooms with showers. So they were having to be transported. They are having to be transported to fire departments or the YMCA or other places. We found really sketchy documentation showing that they were receiving their medication, showing that they're getting their therapy, showing that they're going to school. Some of these kids were getting it, just wasn't getting documented, but in some instances they weren't getting it at all. So very difficult to find out how they're being cared for. Many of these kids were at risk of being a runaway. They have a very significant number of kids that in fact do run away from office buildings. The buildings themselves are very accessible to the public. Many times there are other offices within those buildings. They're a strip mall, they're in a high rise, they're by an interstate. So that we found out was a whole nother risk that we hadn't even contemplated. You have kids running away. One girl in particular, she ran away from her office building that she was staying at. It took them 2 months to find her. When they found her, she was sleeping in a tent with a middle-aged man who was wanted for murder. So incredibly dangerous and serious outcome. Another girl, she ran away, and then when they found her, they found out that she had been sex trafficked. Just really horrible situations when the kids run away, even when the kids are still in placement. One young girl, 13 years old, with an IQ of 76, they put her in an emergency shelter, and a supervisor at the shelter got into a verbal argument with her, knocked her to the ground, causing bruising to her face, a black eye. So there's a real lack of oversight, a real lack of making sure they're getting the care that they need. And when you're talking about this particular segment of our population, these kids need very intentional, loving care. They need to feel secure. They need to get the help they need. And we're just not doing it under the system.
That certainly explains why you call this investigation, the results of the investigation, heartbreaking.
They're deeply heartbreaking. And it's like the more you find out, the worse it gets. So one of the office buildings we look at, I'm going to read you this letter that these kids get. So when they're put in an office building, they have a letter they receive that says, "Hello, unfortunately, we have been unable to secure a placement for you. We are continuing to look for a placement for you until we locate one. You'll be spending time with DCBS staff. This is a tough situation for everyone." And I think that just underscores, like, these kids feel like they are not wanted. Nobody wants them. They're not getting the care and the treatment they need. It is heartbreaking on absolutely every level.
Is this a problem with the cabinet's management of the foster care system, or is the system just overwhelmed?
I think it's both. In fairness, I do. the cabinet absolutely needs to be doing a better job. And in our on-site visits, we found that there were a number of social workers who were really trying the best they could, and they really do care about these kids. But the system that has been in place is unfortunately becoming permanent. It was supposed to be an emergency crisis situation, and it's becoming baked in, and it really does not work to meet the needs of these kids. So you do have absolutely a CHFS issue. That's a big part of it. But there is a decrease in available foster parents, and that's a problem too. So it needs to be a much more aggressive, much more intentional recruitment process. We need to figure out more treatment possibilities that are available for these kids. So it is multifaceted, but the cabinet is I think really breaking down on almost every level that they're involved with. And it is a crisis situation, but it's becoming more ongoing. We need to have an off-ramp. We need to have a strategy to how to resolve this and fix this. One of the things I suggested was engaging the faith-based community. Southern Baptists have had Sunrise since the Civil War, long time. And they have done great work. There's one point in time where Governor Beshear was trying to prevent them from getting government contracts to be able to be involved in the foster care system. And Lawrence, you'll remember I signed a letter along with other constitutional officers pushing back against that and saying, hey, Sunrise has a tremendous track record. You need their assistance. So we really need to engage the faith-based community so much more. There's actually a Southern Baptist Church in Bowling Green that has provided a house. And that region is no longer using office buildings to house kids because this church has donated a house that has a bathroom and a kitchen and 3 bedrooms. And one young child said that we're told when he was staying there that it was the nicest place he'd ever stayed in his life. So absolutely, there is a significant role for the faith-based community. And I think that will fill in a lot of the gaps that the cabinet is encountering right now.
That's where I was going next. As you said, in 2021, Governor Beshear tried to end the contract with Sunrise, but it sounds like right now the state needs to really embrace and support private agencies such as Sunrise to help solve this problem.
100%. And we have seen a massive decrease from 2023 to now. So the numbers are only going down. And I hear from the faith-based community all the time that there are people ready, willing, and able who want to step in to care for these kids. And I think it's important to remember 130 of the a little over 300 kids that we found were not high risk, high requirement children. They were pretty ordinary kids who have ordinary issues. You do have the more high risk, more high maintenance kids. And there are people who are willing to step up and care for those kids too, which I think, the Christian community has always seen hope for every situation. And so they're well placed and well prepared to, not give up on anybody and see a future for all these kids. So absolutely, there needs to be a lot more with the faith-based community.
The audit laid out several recommendations to fix the problem. Give us a couple of the primary solutions, the highlights that you want to be put in place.
Absolutely. Well, I do think a big number one is engaging the faith-based community. That's why it's wonderful you and I are talking today. And it's not just needing foster parents, which that is a real key. But even if you can't assist with being a foster parent, the church in Bowling Green that has fixed up a house, donated it, made it available, they make whatever repairs are needed. They've had HVAC people come in and they'll fix, because that's their area of expertise. They'll fix the HVAC. People who donate backpacks filled with stuffed animals and clothes for kids that need help. So it's not just, hey, foster parents, that's all we need. There's a wide variety of needs in that. Washington State has actually started to develop a community when someone is a foster parent, where you can have respite care if you need to go, on vacation, or you've got to have some time where you're doing some other things. And I think that's another area where the faith-based community is just ideally suited to be able to assist in that kind of wrap around, we're going to be in this with you help. And it's made a big difference in Washington State of keeping people in the foster parent system. You've just got more help. So I think that is a big number one. Obviously, the cabinet has a lot of work to do. They have no formal guidelines and policies in place to make sure you're getting your medication, make sure you're getting your treatment. There's a lot that can be done internally in the Cabinet for Family Services. The General Assembly, I know, is eager to step in where they can help. There probably does need to be an increase in money available to help foster parents with resources they need, and also to make sure there's more treatment facilities available for those instances. But it's a wide variety. The faith-based community is a huge part, though, of fixing this problem.
Has the cabinet responded to your report yet?
Not yet, and they have 15 days to do so. So I expect them to take the full 15 days to answer. And so this was released earlier. It was released on Monday earlier this week. But under the statute, it's interesting. This is not a technical audit. It's an investigation by the Ombudsman's office, which has different rules than the audits do. So the Ombudsman investigations begin with a release and then a 15-day period of time in which the cabinet can respond. And then there's a certain period of time in which they have to then say what recommendations they've taken up, what actions they've taken, and things like that.
Final question, and you talked about this some. What can Kentucky Baptist do to help solve this crisis?
Well, Kentucky Baptists have always been involved in this problem for as long as we've been a state almost. I mean, the Baptists have been right there, Sunrise. So I would say keep doing what you're doing and please do more of it.
State Auditor Allison Ball, since that interview, Governor Beshear has come out throwing shade on that report, saying essentially it was inaccurate. And Ball responded by saying, well, we used your numbers. So if it's not accurate, then your cabinet gave us the bad numbers. But bottom line, there are still, she says, kids out there trapped in the foster care system who are not being cared for adequately. And she talked about, Chip, you remember this. This was before I came to the KBC. But the governor in 2021 tried to end the contract. But it's good to hear Allison Ball say services of places like Sunrise are needed.
Yes, and she said the exact word that we are all thinking, heartbreaking. And, James tells us that we're to care for the widows and orphans in their affliction, and orphans are foster care children, not all necessarily orphans. But, how troubling this should be to us. And what will history say about the status of the state of Kentucky to ignore the needs of these children who in terrible situations of life? And so I'm thankful for Allison Ball, for her bringing this to light, for her speaking the truth. And I'm disappointed that the governor can talk about loving your neighbor and loving God, loving your neighbor. And yet here's one case where that is not happening. And thank you to Allison Ball for bringing this to light. And Kentucky Baptist and the population in general needs to say this cannot happen. We're thankful for Sunrise Children's Services, and while the governor tried to cut Sunrise out years ago, realized thankfully that Sunrise provides an incredible service of trying to care for kids. And I think we all would join in asking people to support Sunrise Children's Services all you can with your prayers, with your giving, because it sure does make a difference in the lives of vulnerable children.
Exactly. Well said. Well, I think today I want to end with what else? March Madness, basketball. Give me, in just a couple of minutes, your expectations, Chip and Mark, for the Wildcats, and I'll give you mine later on for the Cardinals, and who your Final Four picks may be. Mark, we'll start with you, and then I want to hear later on from Tessa, who is not a huge sports fan, but is probably smarter than the rest of us about this. So let's start with you, Mark.
Okay. Well, I had a better feeling about Louisville until today when it was announced that Mikael Brown is not going to be able to play this weekend with his back issues, but he was out there in the shoot around today. I don't know. I know shoot arounds are different than full games, but anyway, it'll be interesting to hear what the Cardinal fans say about that. And I think they could get bit by the upset bug in the first round. And I really originally had them going out in the second round, not the first round. But with this news, I'm going to put them out in the first round. UK could lose first round. Don't think they will. Facing an old coach, Herb Sendek, who was on Patino's staff in the 90s. I think Kentucky gets by the first game. They will not get by the second game. It's going to be a long march for the Bluegrass State. As far as my Final Four, I have Duke, Houston, Michigan.
Choke on that one, right? Duke.
Yeah. Michigan and Purdue. I mean, is that just and I'm gonna go with the Boilermakers winning it all.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Upset City. Chip, quickly, What's going to happen to the Wildcats and your Final Four picks?
Okay, difficult to do this in a short time, but in the East, of course, Duke looks like might have a cakewalk through that regional, although there's no way I can predict Duke to win that regional. So I'm picking St. John's out of that regional. I do think Louisville's going to struggle against South Florida, but Yahoo Sports on a story today listed 11 teams that they think can win it all, and Louisville was one of those 11. It was the lowest seeded team of the 11, but it was comparing offensive and defensive efficiency. But I'm picking St. John's out of the East, Florida out of the South. I'm picking Arkansas, and then in
John
the Midwest.
Calipari.
Yes, and you know, I'm basing that on A Cup is just a great player. He might be the first pick out of the draft. I don't know. I can see that happening. But then I think out of the Midwest, it would be Kentucky or Alabama. I'm going to pick Kentucky, although I don't think they'll win. I think they will beat Santa Clara. I don't think they can beat Iowa State in the second round, although I wish Tennessee State would upset Iowa State. Tennessee State is a 15 seed. One of their players is Jabrion Spikes, who is from my hometown of Princeton, Kentucky, played last year at Georgetown College, and so that's my sentimental favorite to win that game. But overall, I'm picking Florida to repeat.
Okay, all right. Tessa, give us your wisdom.
Well, guys, I don't follow college basketball. I don't have time, but I know basketball because I played all the way through high school and I was a starter on varsity. I love basketball. So I'm just running on vibes and home state loyalty. I have deep roots in Texas. So I am pleased to report that, Mark, I followed you. I think Louisville's going to be out in the first round. I think Kentucky's going to go out to Iowa State in the second. That's just the vibes that I've got. But for Final Four, we are people of faith. So I'm saying California Baptist. And then Houston. And I think Houston might take it all. That's kind of I'm not going to say bet, but that's what I think. That's what I have in my bracket. And then also University of Texas and Texas Tech as well, all in the Final Four. Only time will tell, but those are my state loyalties.
Hey, your vibes are as good as our guesses, that's for sure. For
I'm
me,
sure there's a science, but
Louisville could either lose in the first game or they can go to the Final Four. It doesn't help, as you said, Mark, that Michael Brown apparently is not going to play. We'll see.
Right.
But I have the Cardinals beating South Florida regardless, but losing next week or the next game to probably Michigan State. I think that's who they play after that. So I don't have them going past the second round. I hope I'm wrong, but that's what I think. My Final Four picks are UConn, Houston, Arizona, and Michigan. And I have Houston winning it all. So I think you and I agree, Tessa, that Houston, which was runner-up last year, may come through this year. So we'll see. Tessa, you probably will beat all of us in this guessing game. But it's going to be fun to watch as the tournament unofficially got underway on Tuesday, but officially on Thursday. All right. That was fun. Thanks for watching and listening. Please tell others about KentuckyToday.com and give us a good 5-star review on Apple. And for more information on the Kentucky Baptist Convention and the cooperative program that makes this program possible, go to kybaptist.org. Lord willing, we'll see you next time on the Kentucky Today podcast.